रामाय रामभद्राय रामचंद्राय वेदसे रघुनाथाय नाथाय सीतायाः पतये नमः. Ayodhya chapter number 19. I promise. The recitation begins now. Rama lent a joyful ear to the words of Kaikeyi that ruined his brightest hopes and blotted out forever the happy future that was opening out to him. He clasped his hands in profound reverence to his stepmother and said, "My queen, on my eyes and ears be it. I take myself to the dark forest and live the life of a hermit with matted hair, deerskin, and bark of trees. Is it not my bounden duty to fulfill my father's promise? But the king knows me better than myself, so no misfortune or calamity has the least power to shake his iron will, the flower of valor and heroism. I wonder that he evinces not his usual joy and delight at beholding me. I am all anxious to know why. But I pray you entertain not the least suspicion about my willingness to keep my word. I swear it before you once again, most solemnly. I go to the dark forest to lead the life of a hermit with matted hair, clad in deerskin and bark of trees. His Majesty is the most watchful guardian of my interests. I have sat at his feet and learned the life of truth and being. He is a lord and ruler over us. Ingratitude was never associated with his name, much less towards you. Is it not my most joyful duty to obey his behests without question, without hesitation, and at any cost? But one thought rankles in my heart. Why did I not receive the order of Bharata's coronation from the lips of His Majesty? Was he anxious to spare me any probable pain or disappointment? If so, he forgets that Bharata is my brother. Knows he of anyone who loves Bharata more? When I broke the bow of Shiva in the hall of Janaka and won Sita as a prize of valor, would I not have most joyfully resigned my claims to her in his favor if Bharata had but expressed a wish? This mighty kingdom, this wealth, nay, my very life itself, I hold but valuable only so far as they were of service to him. Then my father and Lord has himself laid his commands on me, that I should see the crown placed on the brows of Bharata. It is a sacred duty with me to fulfill his promises to you. Your inclination too runs that way. Are not these reasons enough? Alas, my heart bleeds to see His Majesty hang his stately head in sorrow and grief, dropping scalding tears on the affrighted earth. I pray you to anyhow soothe away his grief. Let countless messengers ride on fast horses to the capital of the Lord of Kaikeyi to bring back Bharata as His Majesty has ordered. I go straight from here to the forest of Dandaka and live there for 10 years and 4. Would I think twice about obeying my father's commands? Kaikeyi knew full well that Rama never went back upon his word. He was as good as gone to Dandaka. Her heart rejoiced greatly, and she did her best to hurry him on. You are ever right. Let messengers hasten on fleet horses even now to bring back Bharata from his uncle's capital. It does not benefit you to delay here, and you are so eager to go to the forests. So you do well to hasten your departure to Dandaka. It is but the sense of shame that prevents His Majesty from ordering you himself. Let it not lie heavy upon your heart. I know full well that he bathes not, nor breaks his fast, unless he sees you depart to the woods." Dasharatha was shocked beyond conception at these cruel words and crying, "Alas, what horrible iniquity! What have I done that my eyes should be polluted with such foul accusations?" He fell in a dead faint on his bed of gold. Rama sprang to his side and caught him in his arms, while the cruel words of Kaikeyi lashed him like a spirited steed to hasten his departure to the forests. But the slightest shadow of grief never dimmed the bright serenity of his soul. "My queen, you do me but ill justice to think that my heart hankers after wealth, pomp, and power. Far be it from my thoughts to remain here, to win the love and affection of the people and rule over them. Methinks you read my stay here to mean, if I manage to stay here till Bharata comes, who knows that he may renounce the crown in my favor out of his love and devotion to me. My acts, my words, my thoughts center around one desire and only one, to fulfill my dharma. I pray you to lay to your heart well that the hollow joys of life have no power over me, and that I am as dispassionate as the sages that abide in the holy forests. I pray you remember carefully that I hold my life of value only so far as it serves to fulfill His Majesty's pleasure. No I of any higher dharma than to wait on the pleasure of my Father and serve Him in thought, word, and deed. It needs not the commands of His Majesty. A word from your good self, a hint is more than enough to make the forest a joyful home for me during twice 7 years. No one has a more unquestioned right than yourself to dispose of me in every way. I pride myself on being the chosen and privileged servant of your Majesty, yet I find that you have thought it fit to ask this trifle of my father. I am tempted to think that you allow not the possibility of my possessing such noble qualities as magnanimity and truth. Bear with me a while till I take the leave of my mother and console Sita. I pray you look to the necessary arrangements about Bharata's succession to the throne and the due discharge of his filial duties towards our Lord. For it is the dharma sanctified by the immemorial usage of my ancestors of happy memory. These gentle words, so noble, so generous, and so utterly unselfish, but too much for poor old Dashratha. A tempest of grief shook his whole being to its very foundations, and he sobbed aloud while burning tears coursed down his aged cheeks. Then Rama touched all reverently the feet of his sire, utterly senseless with grief, and of the diabolical Kaikeyi, went around them in low humility and walked out of the women's apartments. No shadow of grief or anger or disappointment or annoyance dimmed the brightness of his looks. He took his way to his palace while his friends followed him in awed silence. At his heels went Lakshmana in a terrible wrath, hissing like a wounded cobra and powerless to keep back his fast-flowing tears. One should go round and reverence rare articles, auspicious objects, and crossings, even as the books laid down. Hence, Rama went round the materials ready, stored against his coronation. He would not so much as glance at them, but passed on slowly, praying hard all the while that they might be better utilized in the coming coronation of Bharata. The dark night has no power to dim the beauty of the moon, ever the bright bringer of joy to all. Even so, the loss of a crown and the unrighteous banishment from his kingdom had no power to dim the glory of the Lord of the worlds, of whom eternal and boundless bliss is one of his attributes. His heart put away from itself a proffered throne and sway over the broad earth, and elected to live a life of dreary exile in the trackless forests. Verily, the souls of the great sages and saints were not more serene, dispassionate, and unshaken. He gently refused the umbrella of state, the chamaras, and the other insignia of royalty, and proceeded on foot to the mansion of his mother to inform her of the sad news. He dismissed, with a smile, his friends and loving citizens, and kept his senses under stern restraint. He grieved to see others grieve for him, but would not allow the least sign of it to escape him. Those around him were unable to detect any change in his face or looks or words or demeanor. He was, as ever, the lord of Sri and auspiciousness, and the flawless champion of truth. He lost nothing of his innate cheerfulness of heart, even as the autumn moon whose brightness wanes not. Undisturbed by joy or sorrow, unparalleled in fame, Rama was still the giver of boundless pleasure and happiness to all beings, and spoke sweet words in kind to all around him. And so he passed on to his mother's palace. Lakshmana, the heroic brother, and his pure and noble excellences followed him there, exercising an iron control over his rebellious grief. Rama beheld there groups of men and women rejoicing in the anticipated happiness of his coronation, and said to himself with a sigh, "Alas, that I should be the messenger of grief and many other calamities to these my friends who are now so happy. I should exercise the utmost vigilance and control, lest I betray the least sign of grief in my features or behavior, and these good souls die of a broken heart." And so saying, he entered the apartments of his mother, the royal queen, with a cheerful smile. Mangalam Kaushalendraya Mahaniya Gunapte Chakravarti Dhanurjaya Sarva Bhaumaya Mangalam.